So, time to talk about hobbies. I don't know exactly what constitutes a hobby, but there are at least a few things that I do purely for fun that I could talk about. But I think the most interesting requires a little bit of mysticism, spirituality, and dice. But I think that if we're going to talk about this, we're going to need a change of scenery. I can't do this one in the basement, so come along, if you will.
This is the start of the presentation of a habit of blind watch now as I run you all through the way I create my monsters folklore and a way to modernize it for my audience of fun. Take what has been said before and bring emotional resonance within a world of minis representing fouling through its sun with a short accent over snows in its dirty face. A bird flying in a circle with another bird of fire. Huge fallout and so flash a troll emerges from his cave feeling hungry.
I used to run a lot of D&D sessions, and like many DMs, I wanted to create my own worlds filled with people and lore and monsters. But I think we often as DMs get caught up in the world of politics and characters, as I often did, and for many of my campaigns, that's all they were. Politics and lore. And as much as I love that type of game, there's one that I've run that has always stood out to me as being slightly different. It's not what I did in this campaign that was particularly different. You know, it was still overplanned, still loads of unnecessary lore, but it just felt more magical, and I think I know why. The campaign was Viking themed and I had a ranger in my party. The whole game had this survival feeling, you know, trekking through the forests and over mountains while encountering different folkloric creatures. As time went on, you know, my players got more involved in the politics and we went to different realms, but the game never really recovered after that. It was the creatures. It was the down-to-earth, dirty, simple creature-focused stories. You know, stories that centered around a hinky punk or a deathworm. Those are the bits that we still remember, and the bits that I happen to have most fun enjoying. I fell into this hobby by way of wanting creatures for my ranger to know about and deal with. Almost 3 years have passed since the last session in that campaign, and I never really stopped planning for my ranger. The hobby I want to talk about today is researching different folkloric creatures and turning them into NPC stat blocks for D&D. Let's start with a few examples of my process. Usually, this all starts off with the feeling of, ooh, that's so cool. And the best part of folklore research is that it'll be rare that you'll look into something and not find sick shit for it. To give an example, I'm going to take the most boring thing usually put in video games to show how just a little more research usually will reveal so much cool shit behind the stories that these creatures come from. Skyrim and many other games use Draugr, or Draugr, all the time as zombie-like cannon fodder to fill up crypts and dungeons. Dull. There are many reasons that I dislike Skyrim, and its mishandling of Scandinavian folklore is one of them, the Draugr being one of the most egregious examples. Because the Draugr pass down through the years of intimate stories, sagas given to those who have not been born yet, show that the Draugr are not mindless zombies. Draugr, as the Scandinavians knew them, were smart and scary. They are bloated, black corpses of kings and noblemen buried in their funeral mounds, protecting their earthly belongings as they were not laid to rest correctly. You would know them as you'd find them standing or sitting. They're greedy, defend their hoard, but may also venture out to steal from others. But where they are most interesting lies in what they can do. Let's stat out the block. We got high health, medium AC, slow speed. Strong and tough, but weak everywhere else. A whole bunch of resistances and vulnerabilities, all based on stories and common conventions. Make him stinky for fun, and then here's our first ability. Shapeshifting. The Draugr can turn into any of these creatures. A seal, a great flayed bull, a grey horse with a broken back and no ears or tail, and a cat that can change its weight at will. Strange, but each of these creatures are all examples of things that Draugr have turned into in folklore tales. Next, enter the dreaming. Draugr can enter the dreams of those near its mound and weaken them until it's killed. In many of the stories involving Draugr, the protagonist will have nightmares of it before they encounter it, and will often find themselves weak until they decapitate it. And lastly, cause darkness. Once each day they can blot out the sky for up to 500 feet. Again, in the stories, when they are violent, they will cause the sky to go black. Give it some standard attacks and boom, you go from generic zombie-ass bitch to shape-shifting, night-bringing, Freddy Krueger-ass villain. Think of the stories you can now tell with this new version of a Draugr. A king wants another dead king's wealth, so you have to raid a mound. Or you start having nightmares of a swelling black corpse, and you must kill it to return to form. Or you go to pet a cat in an oddly quiet town, and bam, the sky goes dark. All those opportunities come from looking into the original stories of these creatures, the ones told over 1,000 years ago. Why not take on ideas that worked back then and could work now? Now, that's a lot. I have used some of these in games before. In fact, let me quickly go over a creature that many of you probably won't know, or will only know from being in my game that I ran. Down in the south of Sweden, there's an island just off the east coast called Gotland. Mostly inconsequential, but one of the stories that I love that comes from that island is the story of the Beast. The Beast, like me, is a short little man with a cap, although his is normally red. Like most Germanic folklore, he comes from the improper burial of a person, but the Beast specifically was a man that stole land from others. Now he is short and grey and walks around the forest of Gotland with a large axe. He will spend most of his time doing one of three things. As he is condemned to walk the earth forever, he is given a task, which is to chop down every tree on the island. Now, unfortunately, he's very bad at his job, as he only cuts down about one tree every 100 or so years. And while he's procrastinating that, another thing he does is walk around the borders of the land that he stole, moving the land markers of who holds what land, saying, this is right, this is not. And the last thing he does is disrupt logging efforts in the forest as kind of a nature spirit. You know, transport's not going on time and tipping over piles of lumber, that kind of stuff. So let's block him out and go over some of the stranger things about him. He's got nothing special about his AC or health or stats or vulnerabilities, but immediately we get into something a little bit odd, which is stumpify. The beast can turn into a stump whenever he wants. You know, it's said that he is often mistaken, as the little grey man as he is, for a stump, so I thought that made sense. He can also vanish, but only when seen. So it's only while you're looking at him can he disappear. And he can also make your vision go dark. His whole thing is messing with the minds of people and messing with people who, you know, chop down trees to make him invisible so he can do his tricksy stuff, so all that is stuff he does. But the camera just died. I'll have to come out later, finish it all. So I had intended on finishing filming this outside, but the rain will fucking get you, I guess. So there may be certain sections of this that don't make as much sense as I'd want them to, or hit as hard as I would like them to, so just bear with, would you? But as we left it, the beast and his strange pseudo-invisibility. Now again, taken from folklore tales, there are ways to fix your vision once he makes you go blind or vanishes from your sight, and that is to take a piece of your clothing, a garment of yours, say for example a brooch, and turn it a little crooked. Again, strange folklore things that really will not make a lot of sense to the players, but once they do figure it out or they read it somewhere, it'll be so much fun. We'll also give him the ability to claim land that makes it difficult to get near him with land markers. A little nod to his land grabbing ways, and voila! Another strange little guy to encounter in the woods. Now, I could go on and on about creature after creature, but I think you get the point. Where there's the Ouslam bird from England that flies up its own ass, or the firebird from Slavic folklore, there are so many stories out there that you can draw from for inspiration for so many more stories. This next section was supposed to be filmed out in that forest that I was earlier, in front of a fire pit, but I'm not a particularly spiritual person, not religious, don't believe in ghosts, but sometimes I'll come out to this forest and think, I know that in the town that I live, people have been here for a few hundred years, at least back to the 1700s. But I do sometimes wonder when I look at that fire pit, if people back when there were stories of trolls and Kusith and Grindylow and great serpents, if they sat in this forest around a fire and shared those stories with one another. I wonder if they scared their friends with tales of waking up with a mare on their chest or warning of a neck down by the river. And then I think, is that not what I do? When I host a game of D&D, am I not sitting around a proverbial campfire with my friends telling stories? I don't know. I'm a fairly cynical and analytical guy, and often when I think of these stories, I think of idiotic cavemen passing the time. But that's not what these stories were. They were stories people told themselves and others to explain what they couldn't. Couldn't get my lumber in on time, it kept falling out of my cart. Must have been Bisan. But also, these are still modern stories. There was a case in Sweden where a man was executed for having sexual relations with a wood nymph-like being called a Börsrå. This case happened in 1690. This is after Shakespeare. And my own grandmother still holds belief in Nisse, small gnomes that help farmers. But it still isn't even that. Looking at these folkloric tales, you can clearly see that these stories came about when a group of friends or loved ones came together and told stories together. Stories that were so affecting that we still know them today. Like, is that not the goal as a DM, right? Imagine telling a story with your friends so good and profound that people still talk about it 1,000 years later. There's a sense of legacy and comfort and connectedness that I feel as I take these stories told by hundreds of lips, spoken throughout the ages, from friend to friend, from mother to daughter, from father to son, and I give them new life. D&D as a hobby on its own is already so wonderful. People all across the globe connect to one another with made-up rules to create stories. I just don't want those that did it before us to be left out.